Bit of a change today from the usual videos. I'm here today with Josh Harris. I'll give a quick introduction to Josh. Josh is a running legend down here in Tasmania. I'm going to read from a screen here because his CV is so long. But yeah, down here in Tassie, Josh is a legend. He's won 32 open titles from 1500 meters up to the marathon. He even won a state triple jump title back in 2008. He represented Australia at the London 2017 World Championships in the marathon. He still holds the Australian records for the 25,000 metres and the 30,000 metres on the track, where he also set the Tasmanian records for the 20,000 metres, 25,000 metres, and 30,000 metres en route. Josh boasts personal bests of in the 800, 154.8, 1500, 351.2, 3,000 metres, 814, 3,000 metres steeplechase, 904, 5,000 metres, 14:17, 10,000 metres, 29:42, half marathon, 104:55, and the marathon, 2:17:08. Josh was also at one time the beer mile world record holder with a time of 5:14. His PB is now 4:51, but the world record has since plummeted. He's now one of the world's top e-cyclists, with recent results including 8th place at the 2024 esports world champs, 4th and 5th at the 2024 and 2025 Zwift Games, and is also the Australian esports cycling champion. Josh is the only person in history to represent his country in running, cycling, and the beer mile. So, Josh, good to have you here. Did I get anything
Thanks.
wrong in there?
Yeah, we just spoke about the beer mile. You said 5:14. It was
Half, uh,
5:04. So,
yeah,
but
just
yeah,
stumbling
thanks.
over those words.
Thanks for having me on, mate. It's good to chat, and I've enjoyed following your progress lately and seeing all the great things that you've been able to achieve.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. Yeah, that's good. So, the first time I ever met Josh, or I wouldn't say I met him, but the first time I ever saw Josh was state all schools championships back in 2005, and it would have been the 1500 meters. I was pretty happy with my result. I think it was the second meet I'd ever done in my life. First time I broke 5 minutes, ran 4:58, but you were 30 seconds ahead in that race. You won it in 4:28. You were just ahead of Alex Spinks and Nathan Morey. And I can remember even then thinking, these guys, they're like professionals already at the age of 15. So tell me how you got into running and what your training was like in those early years.
Yeah, so I started as someone who would just love to run laps around the backyard at home, and I'd time myself and get right into what time I could do for X amount of laps around the backyard. I was pretty shy though, so it took me a little while to actually get into like the little athletic scene. But the
Yep.
first meet that mum ever took me down to, like I instantly just fell in love with it and was kind of obsessed in a way. I wouldn't say that early years I was kind of training crazily or anything. Like things were so different back then in terms of like what we knew and what was
Yeah.
accessible to us. And so it was just a real progression from there. And like I had that same kind of like obsession for improving and that kind of thing for many years.
Yeah. That's interesting because yeah, I was in the same position. I can remember going out for runs when you didn't have the internet, you didn't know how to train. I basically just thought if I go out and hammer myself for 20 minutes every second day, I'll get fit. But yeah, things have definitely changed. But you got a coach fairly early on. When did
Yeah, so um yeah, I had a bit of a stint when I was like late primary school with Gary Armstrong, who actually mentored and coached Sam Clifford
Yep.
for a while there. And then that kind of transitioned into when I started like the senior athletics, I guess you'd call it. And that's so when I was about 14 and started in the steeplechase, um, Andrew Willis and I kind of got in contact. And
Yep.
so yeah, he was my coach for many years, and had like a great influence on that process. And it's really funny when you mention those times that we were running back then as being like really quick, because if
Yeah.
you if like you compared me to someone these days at 15 and I ran that time, like they'd say it was no good.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was lightning fast that you guys were running 4:28. back in at the age of 15. It was lightning fast to me. But yeah, it's good. But so when what did you say the age was that you actually started training with a structure, like properly training?
I'd say like it was consistent from about 14, I
Yeah,
think, if I can, yeah, go back from there. But at the time, I remember it was very much just you'd go down to like in summer, you'd go to the track probably 3 days a week, and then
yeah,
you do a 40 minute run or something like that on a weekend. And in winter, you'd just move the location somewhere else. Like it was,
yeah,
yeah, it was really different to kind of
yeah,
what you do these days. But yeah, that's when I kind of started the structure, and there were a lot of progressions from that point onwards.
yeah. So I've heard you talk about um, your coach, Andrew Willis, was really good at kind of just gradually building the amount of
Mm.
volume, the amount of intensity you're doing in your training. So
Yep.
I guess talk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, so it was very much like, and at that stage when I was very young, like I wasn't really thinking about it, but I looked back like training diary after training diary, and you just noticed that the volume would be increasing, that the amount of like intensity, um, minutes, I guess, were increasing. They were just like turning dials up here and there, and that's one thing that I think he did really well. I think a lot of stuff back then was, people just really had a passion for it,
Yeah,
more so than what we'd probably consider like a wealth of like knowledge of all training methodologies
yeah,
and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, he did that in a really good way, and like had a great. It was really fun, and I think
yep,
that kind of that helped as well. And then it was kind of around those ages as well where I really started to take an interest in what I was doing, and I was interested in why we do things that we do. Probably coincided with doing some sports science at college and that kind of thing. And so that relationship evolved a bit over time to
yeah,
probably more of like a mentor um, over time, because I ended up just really like wanting to have control of what I was doing, and I'd spend hours thinking about it, and I wanted to be creative and do that
yeah,
stuff. So yeah, it was interesting.
yeah. So what age would you say you were when it kind of shifted from Andrew being involved to you kind of taking over and being the kind of
Mm.
driver of your training?
Yeah, well, like it was definitely like a gradual release for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
And Andrew got sick as well. Like I can't remember
yeah,
exactly what year. So like they kind of linked in similar times. I'm gonna say like I would have been 20 when like I was definitely more in control. If yeah, and
yeah,
I'd always go to him for guidance, probably less and less over time. I'm gonna say the tipping point was about 20, but I could be plus or minus a couple of years there, really.
yeah. That's interesting because I went back, I had a look at your early Strava. So you were a really, really early adopter of Strava. We'll talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit later. Um, but I noticed even back in 20, it might have been 20, early 2011, maybe even earlier than that, you had a 190K week in there,
I
which
don't know about
may,
that.
oh, I think it was up at Falls. It might have been, it was a bit of a spike. It
Okay,
was, yeah, maybe
I
it was early
recall.
2011, February
Yeah, right.
2011.
I recall, like, I know I had some, because to actually get the 2011 runs onto Strava, I
Yeah,
needed to go back to like Garmin Connect and like download activities from races. And my memory of it is that like it was probably 2013 when I probably did a week around that kind of number, because I know
okay.
when I trained for my first marathon in 2013, I was regularly probably around the 150 160 mark.
Yep.
And there might have been like a big one like that, but I don't really recall 2011 doing more than like 120 kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe there was a double upload or something,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's probably done it. But yeah, I looked back and I thought, oh, even in 2011 you were doing, I think there was quite a few above 150, but
Yeah,
Maybe it's just
they might have been the duplicates, mate. Because
yeah, yeah,
um yeah, when I look back on all that stuff at some point down the line, it was definitely like I feel like when I was about 19, I was doing around 90. And then by the time I was, 21, I was probably doing like 110.
yeah,
And yeah, so by the time we got to about 2013, and I was 23, that's probably
yeah,
when we started approaching like the 100 mile for the first time.
yeah. So we probably jumped ahead a fair bit, but
Yeah.
you had quite a bit of success as a teenager as well. Steeplechase Australian title, was that under 18s?
Yeah, yeah, won the under 18s.
Yeah,
Yeah, and probably like had a real big breakthrough in the steeplechase, I'd say in the under 16s.
yeah,
Like that just went crazy from like about 6:40 to like low 6 minutes overnight almost, and
yeah,
like was really really invested in the steeplechase. I think the carrot of I think it was the World Youth was like right in the wheelhouse for a bit. Didn't end up making it, and kind of burnt out from the steeple a little bit in those like from that process.
yeah,
But yeah, I definitely had some good successes in the steeplechase as a youngster, and particularly when the hurdles were the with a smaller height.
yeah, yeah. Is it 76 centimeters? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I can remember the jump up because I did a few steeples, but I can remember as soon as I went up that extra 15 centimeters, it was just like, no, I can't do this anymore.
It's like a different sport. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I could almost run the same times on the flat as I could over the smaller ones, but then the big ones were just like yeah,
yeah,
they just changed things.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So cross country as well. I can remember 20, or was it 2018? I don't know what I'm thinking about. I was 18. It would have been 2008.
Hmm.
You had a pretty good result there in Geelong. You were,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
second.
remember
You got a medal in the schools competition, I
they
think.
didn't give us medals. I can't remember why, but there was like
Yeah,
there was like some kind of thing that Tassie weren't part of something, and
yeah,
it didn't end up because I feel like from memory I might have been say like eighth overall, but second
yeah,
in a schools thing. That's very back in the memory bank. So I remember Geelong champion Mark Blitzarves was there, 300
yeah,
game superstar. Would have
yeah,
been about that era. But yeah, we dabbled in a bit of cross. I was never as good on the grass, I don't think, as what I was on the track and the road. But had a couple of decent cross country results. I know nationals when it was in Tassie wasn't too bad. A couple of AV results weren't too bad, but I definitely pulled up an early retirement in the cross country compared to the other stuff.
yeah. That race as well was won by Ryan Gregson. There might have also been Richard Everest in there as well, who was
Yeah.
one of, I guess they'd call him a phenom now if he was
Yeah,
American.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
But yeah, never went on to really do anything he got injured quite
He
badly,
had
didn't he? Yeah.
he had heaps of injuries, and I think our age group was like littered with like some of those names that have went
Yeah.
on. Like Niparis would have been there, and then every second year when we'd be the top side of the age group, then you'd get the guys like Brett Robinson, and
Yeah.
and there were a heap of other guys like I think like Cam Page and stuff
Yeah.
like that. With I think Harry Summers might have been our year. Like yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of there were plenty of guys around that did some pretty good things over their career.
Yeah. So tell me about when you kind of moved up, I guess, to more the 5,000, 10,000. Yeah, that kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah. I think most of that stuff in my career was pretty gradual. Like
yeah,
I did a couple of 5Ks, like late teens, and same with the 10K and that kind of thing. I still had goals for 1,500 meters at the time, but just a natural thing. In terms of like when the marathon and the longer distances crept into the mind, it was again coming into like 2013. I debuted in the marathon, so what at that stage I would have been like coming into being 23, and I
yeah,
think eventually it was more I always actually saw myself from a physiology standpoint as kind of similar across like a range of distances, but it was just that like comparably, I might get 15th place in the 5K at nationals, but
Yeah,
like if there was a nationals for the marathon, I'm probably coming third or something like that. It was just a um, more of an opportunity thing, I think,
yeah,
than anything. I saw opportunities at the long distances to potentially have some success, and so we went out that way over time, and it probably also linked in with the fact that I could handle some pretty big training at the time.
yeah. Because you did have a fair bit of speed. I mean, 351 for 1500 meters. I mean, again, we're getting back to that times thing. They don't sound that great
Yes.
now because everyone's running 332 or faster.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm a bit disappointed with the 1500 that I ended up putting down. I think there's definitely more with the 1500, but
yeah,
like stuff like the 800 wasn't too bad with like a 154 and stuff.
yeah,
I'd always like they're not the best times, but I'd always go no worries in like kick finishes and
yeah.
stuff like that for someone that was probably known more for the long distances. And I reckon that that's kind of came out in the last few years in the esports cycling stuff. Like yeah, I don't think that a one-paced marathoner would be able to like have that much success. So I think it's always been in there, but there were just changes in training along the way to suit what the goals were at the time.
So you're a bit of a punchy cyclist. Is that what you're saying?
I've certainly developed it. I'd say now I'm very all round. I can do a
Yeah,
bit of everything. But it's funny how that developed because like I think you're probably going to chat about it, but when I dabbled in road cycling, I didn't have that at all.
yeah,
It was only later where I kind of changed my approach to things that was brought back out.
yeah. Um, so we'll talk about, I guess, transition over to the roads a little bit. So you were 23, did your first marathon. As you say, it's an opportunistic type thing, but you were gradually building up the mileage. Your first result, 2:30 for the marathon. I'm guessing you weren't particularly happy with that.
Yeah, I debuted. I had in the back of my head that I thought I could maybe go sub 220 or low 220s based on other times
Yeah,
at the time. I can't recall exactly my half from that stage, but I think it would have been around the 66
yeah,
or 67 minute mark, which kind of suggested that maybe we could do that. I chose Sydney for debut, which is, you know, it's still pretty hilly, but they've improved it a lot since I
yeah,
went there. So there were probably a few other factors as well that it didn't go the best. But yeah, I think some of the training that I did in the lead up, I very much followed like a mix of like some of my ideas as well as some of the, I guess, the adopted Australian ways at the time in
yeah,
that lead up. And yeah, that was definitely a learning or something that I changed heading into the future ones.
yeah.
Because yeah, the debut, I wasn't happy with it compared to everything else.
What would you say? So, what was the adopted Australian way of training during that time?
Yeah, so back then everyone was all about like the Mono and Deke stuff.
Yeah,
So you know, smashing those sessions like the quarters or the mono fartleks and stuff like that throughout the week. So like
yeah,
15, 20 minute workouts, and then expecting to be able to run for 2.5 hours at a really hard pace. So that was obviously worked for the guys in the 80s,
yeah,
90s, and some of our best runners at the time. But even at the time, I questioned that a bit. So, you
mm,
know, I certainly included elements of that in my training, but at the same time, I tried to incorporate what I'd say was a little bit more specific to the marathon. But I probably just either it was just like a bit of inexperience at the time, didn't have enough of it under my belt, or there wasn't like enough of it, or the other stuff blunted it out.
yeah,
Who knows which, but yeah, that was definitely a learning that I took away from the first one, at least for me anyway. Like I always saw myself as, you know, a pretty hard worker and maybe not the most talented compared to, you know, I'm assuming those guys had a lot of talent as well. And, you know, that program obviously worked for them. And I think I think it's probably undersold as well in the literature how hard those guys probably smash themselves on their like Sunday long runs and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no GPS watches. No one really has a proper gauge on how fast they were going. If they're doing it over hills as well,
Mm,
even if like the pace is not that great to look at,
yeah.
the effort is
Yeah.
probably super high.
They're probably out there that Sunday run over those hills, like marathon effort for 2 hours, like every
Yeah,
weekend. So they're probably actually accumulating a lot of
yeah,
like marathon specific work, and
yeah,
then in all their books and stuff, like it's just talked up like it was just a Sunday stroll,
yeah,
and then they do their 15-20 minute workout on the Tuesday and
yeah. And I guess
Thursday,
that
and
they have to
yeah,
do their 15 or 20-minute workout because they're so cooked from the Sunday long run. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, true, yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting because there was a huge shift in from about 2013 onwards, the way Australians train for the marathon. And I tend to think that you are partly, maybe even largely responsible for that. I think you're, again, being an early adopter of Strava, you're pretty transparent about your training. You appeared on Inside Running podcast or Tell Me Your Tales as it was back then pretty regularly. Everyone was hearing about you doing these 230-kilometer weeks with these big Canova style kind of sessions. So where did that come from? Obviously, you have a degree in exercise science. I'm guessing you're pretty curious of mind in terms of trying to figure out how to actually get the best training in. So I guess talk me through that. Where did that come from?
it was yeah, it was always like whatever my goals were, I just valued like the word specificity, I guess.
Yeah,
And for me, knowing that the marathon demands are a 2 hour plus event, like what that does to the body, and probably especially in the like pre super shoe era,
yeah,
like the body takes a beating over those 2 hours. And I
yeah,
guess my thoughts were that you need to kind of condition yourself for battle, and get your body hardened for those long efforts, which to do that you need to do long efforts in training. And I think that obviously that comes with like an injury risk,
yeah,
because the more of that you do, everyone's got different tolerances. Back then, there weren't the super shoes we have
yeah,
today. It partly was like, as you say, I was quite curious, and then Strava was a part of it as well. There's actually one guy that not many people would probably know his name, to be honest, but back in 2013, an ASVIC guy, Joji Mori,
oh yeah.
um, I think
I've
he ran in
raced
the
against him.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think he ran in the 220s for the marathon, but he was
All right.
doing like what I'd call like a lot of marathon specific stuff
Hmm.
back then, back when I was kind of, curious. And I followed this guy's like Strava, and he had great results off it, and he pretty much ran a great time. And then I think he retired from like, you know, I guess he
Yeah,
he put himself in. He went from taking it very seriously to more of a hobby jogger.
yeah,
Um, I guess you could say, and he's still on
yeah,
the scene now. But
yeah,
yeah, for me, it was all just thinking that you've got to do more than a 15 or 20 minute session to prepare yourself for those long races. And I had I looked into the Canova stuff a bit, but I just had a really good stretch of uninterrupted training. For a while, I thought I was pretty bulletproof in terms of what I could handle, and that kind of thing. And I guess being self-coached at the time, I was willing to take some risks, I guess you'd say. Like if you compare me as a coach to the athletes now, like you always have a bit more of a
yeah,
cautious approach because you don't want them to get injured. But for me, I was kind of like just trying to get the absolute best out of myself.
yeah. That's good. Yeah, you're getting that immediate feedback as well because you know exactly how your body feels. Whereas with other people,
Yeah, yeah,
there's always that filter of they're
yeah,
telling you what they
yeah,
want, what you want to hear in a way, rather than actually just giving you the
yeah,
exact information. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah, but that's interesting. But yeah, Joji Moore is still running like 16:30, 16:40 for 5K. I've raced him a
yeah,
few times. So that's
yeah,
interesting because I would not expect you to essentially picked up that information from someone in Melbourne because
yeah,
I always just assumed that with the internet kind of giving us more information about what was happening internationally, that's
yeah,
where a lot of the information came in. And he might have picked it up from there, but Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
it was a combination. Like I'd read up a bit. Like I wouldn't say I'd like obsessed over like
Yeah,
reading up and that kind of thing. But I guess he just linked in at that time where I was on Strava, and he was someone that I saw what he was doing, and it very much agreed with where my head was at, and I just hadn't quite got to that point in my like training yet. So it was
yeah,
like, okay, like it was ticking boxes for like, okay, this is what I think that I should do in the next program around. Because from memory, I didn't come back to the marathon until 2015, so there was like nearly 2 years kind of between one and two.
yeah,
So I was in that time, I guess, where I kind of continued to develop some of those ideas. But um, I also had a season in between, kind of more focused on the half marathon.
yeah,
But my idea at that stage of half marathon specific was it was fairly high in volume, and there were some like a lot of 40-minute workouts, and
yeah,
even a couple of like 60-minute workouts for the half marathon. So I guess when I came back to the marathon, like that was only going to keep going up and up by that point.
yeah. I guess it's not a very big step then to just go, well, back off the intensity just a little bit and
Yeah.
just increase that volume a little bit up to from 60.
Yeah, yeah, keep it
But
at
the
two
half,
Ks.
so you were pretty consistently bringing the time down in the half as well. I can remember you went to Gold Coast
Yeah,
just about every year,
yeah,
and you seemed to take a minute off
yeah,
for a few years in a row there. So you
yeah,
eventually got down to 64:55.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
would you say that was one of like a standout race
Uh
in your mind for?
it was a solid race.
Yeah,
I think there was a 65 minute that I did like several years earlier. It might have been 2014
yeah,
maybe. I think at the time that was like really good.
yeah,
Um and so given how much I felt like I improved from that point to the 64, like I don't necessarily think that like yeah, that if I had the same equivalent run in 2017 when I ran 104, it might have been closer to like 104 flat kind of thing.
yeah,
The race, you know, as you know, like you need the race to go in your favor as well. And I don't
yeah,
quite think the 64 did, but I was just like a much fitter athlete at the time. I could handle like sub 30, like through 10K almost kind of thing.
yeah,
By that stage, which I definitely couldn't in the earlier runs. But yeah, half marathon, I had a pretty good relationship with the half marathon. I don't think I had too many bad ones. It was an event that I always really enjoyed running for about an hour.
yeah,
And you didn't have that chance like in the marathon of things going pear shaped. So yeah, I always enjoyed the half, and the Goldie was definitely an event that I like to get around when
yeah,
I was in Australia. There were a few times where like there were other races on. I think I went to the World Uni Games the same time one year. Yeah,
super hot. Was
yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah,
Korea, South
yeah.
Korea. Yeah,
Yeah, broke 70 minutes in like scorching heat, which I was really happy with because
yeah,
I was never good in the heat. I'm still not good in hot conditions. So
yeah,
I think smart racing came to the fore on that day, and I was able to certainly beat my rank
yeah,
going in.
yeah. The 65-minute race, did you win the bronze medal for in the Australian or Oceanian
Yeah,
Championships, I
yeah.
think?
There were mixes of like Australian and Oceania championships at the Goldie. Like I don't recall
Yeah,
which year it was an Oceania champs and which was an Australian champs, but yeah, I won a few medals there. I was regularly on the podium at the Gold Coast back then.
yeah,
There were a couple of thirds. And then I think Tassie we won the teams
yeah,
one year. And I don't think I had a great day. I don't think I was as fit the year that Tassie um, won the gold medal. I remember Tomo and Dylan Evans were out there, and it was I remember that one being like one of the hardest races of my life. Like I
mm.
fought so hard to beat Dylan Evans that day. Like, yeah, I wasn't in. I got every ounce of fitness out of myself that day to do that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. I probably should have mentioned it in the introduction as well, but you also won a bronze medal in the Australian 3,000 meter championships at one time as well.
yeah, yeah. I look at that one pretty fondly.
Yeah,
It was a small field, but like the way I did it, like I outkicked guys that didn't expect it
yeah,
to win the bronze. I think like guys that have had pretty solid careers were thereabouts. I think Jack Rayner was second that
yeah,
day.
yeah,
I like just a little bit ahead, and then I'm pretty sure like Riley Cox was like he was thereabouts behind
yeah.
me. Probably Nick Whiteman, who I think was mentioned. He was mentioned in one of your
Oh,
videos.
yeah, yeah.
He would have
Geelong.
been,
Yeah,
yeah, he would have been there. A few other guys, but yeah, that one was great because 12 weeks before I was fat for me. I came off like a bit of a niggle, and
yeah,
I think 12 weeks earlier I ran like 9 minutes for 3K, and then yeah, within
yeah,
12 weeks we'd won a national medal.
yeah. And ran 8:14 in that one.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's quick. Again, getting back to the times doesn't
Yeah.
sound that quick. You
Don't
probably
say
do
the times.
8:14. We'll just say it was third place in the Australian
Yeah,
Championships. That's
exactly.
all you need to know.
Third place in Australian 3K these days would probably be a 7:33 or something. So
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how it's changed. I guess so. So 2015, you're going more into a marathon focus there. I can remember there's a period where you were basically running marathons as training runs and picking up prize money there, but you're pretty consistent as well. Like you seem to be able to handle doing that in training, running low to mid 220s and backing up, I guess. So would you say this is where you've really entered that period of really high mileage? Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah, so by 2015, I would have achieved the magical
mm,
200K barrier
yeah,
a few times. And I went into my second kind of, I guess, main marathon was always down for Fukuoka in Japan in,
yeah,
I think it was the December. So looking at the calendar, I still had a few scars from the Sydney race,
mm,
and there were a few reasons why I did a couple of marathons in the lead up. Like one was a little bit to get the monkey off the back, and two was because at that stage I saw it as something that could kind of benefit me from a specificity point of view,
yeah,
um, by kind of doing the distance in training. And I feel like that was a good thing. Like I ran very under control marathons, like it felt like 90, 95% of marathon pace. And I always felt like someone that could recover pretty well from stimulus like that. So I think I went to Ross, where you've just come from on the
yeah,
weekend, and I think I did some intervals, like lots of 2K reps with a K between, and
yeah,
come out with like a big negative split, low 230s, I think.
yeah,
Um, and then I went on to Melbourne and ran very steady with Jess Stenson. I think we were
yeah,
maybe 228. And again,
mm,
like, so by that stage, I had the confidence that, if I really put down a good one, I was a sub 220 kind of performer. I think in that stage, like those distance training runs helped me.
yeah,
Down the track a little bit further, I don't necessarily think I needed that or as many of them, but I think
yeah,
in those early kind of years of or early marathons, I think they were definitely good things for a couple of different reasons.
yeah. So what are those reasons you'd say?
Well, like I said, like the confidence of putting that other one behind me, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
just like linking in with like the training that I was doing at the time, and just putting specific 2 hour plus
yeah,
runs in the legs and conditioning things. Like it's a great opportunity to kind of harden yourself by
yeah,
doing that much. And obviously the caveat is if like the injury risk and
yeah,
the risk of burning out and that kind of thing. But as I said, I felt like I was someone who recovered fairly well from that kind of thing.
yeah,
And yeah, I think at the time it kind of supplemented the other stuff that I was doing in training pretty well.
yeah. So you had the uni loop. That was your
Yeah,
kind of like stomping ground.
yeah,
I can remember seeing just endless loops around this mile loop. Um, tell me about that. Why did you opt to train on such a small loop, I guess, for
Yeah.
massive sessions that you were doing on there?
Yeah, so a lot of it was just like the control and the confidence
Yeah,
of the like what would come out around there. So a lot of the runners in Lonnie these days probably do most of their work around Heritage Forest, which
yeah,
I'm sure you've done a fair bit of running
yeah,
around there, which is like it's a lovely place, but like I could just never lock into like the right pace and
yeah,
like you said in your last video, like you want to get a bit of confidence from some of the sessions that you're doing. And
yeah, yeah,
like everything I did at Heritage Forest was just like that 10 seconds a K or 5, 10 seconds a K slower, or there was more energy cost of doing the sessions on that surface, that
yeah,
kind of gravelly type surface. So yeah, I found the uni loop. I can't remember when I found that, but it was a nice place because like obviously there weren't really many cars, or when there were cars, like you were running right on the inside anyway, so you were
yeah,
kind of in control of all of that, and it wasn't really an issue.
yeah,
I think back then GPSs were probably like early days anyway. Like GPSs were
yeah,
always a bit generous on the outside wrist.
yeah,
I think that probably improved as time went on. But I remember on Strava, like from the time I started running there to a bit later on, there was definitely like, that's not as long as it used to be.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think it just allowed me to lock in, and I was always someone who I really like to be like there in my sessions
yeah,
and seeing what was coming out and not switching off, but just relaxing, but like knowing the numbers that were coming out. And it was quite, I found it quite fast because you'd run downhill for like 800 meters, just a very gradual downhill.
yeah,
It would often be a headwind down the hill that was sheltered by buildings.
yeah,
And then the rest of the course, you'd have a flat 400 and then often into a tailwind and then just a bit more of a hill for 400 meters. And changing those muscle groups up, I think that was another thing compared to like if you were just on the flat for 90 minutes,
mm,
you're doing the same stuff every single step, but it just changed things up a little bit lap after lap.
yeah. It's quite similar to kind of the Japanese style of just doing endless loops around small parks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I've watched a bit of the Ran to Japan YouTube
yeah,
videos in the past few months, and yeah, they seem to love
yeah,
the little loops. Like very like dedicated guys that are just like locked into to what they're doing,
yeah.
and yeah, they just get it done.
That's good. So the first, I guess, marathon that you were really targeting during that time, was it Fukuoka that
Yeah,
you did? Yeah.
yeah.
So that was it 2015, 2016,
End of 2015.
end of
Yeah,
2015? Yeah.
yeah,
And you were aiming for the sub 220?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Tell
Yeah,
me how that
so
went.
yeah,
Yep.
so I went over there and I got stitched up because
Yeah.
the seeding was based on like all marathon PBs, and I think I entered with yeah, because I didn't have a good marathon at the time. So I just put down like my 65 or whatever I'd ran at the time for half marathon, and that
Yeah.
basically got seeded like after there was a cutoff of like 230 something, I think.
Yeah.
But that got seeded after like all of the marathons. So I had to start right at the back. So we started in like, oh, I can't remember what the park was called, but like the elites got to start in the track, and we kind of all joined up after maybe about 2K or something like
Yeah.
that. So from memory, I think my first K split was 303,
Hmm.
um, which I felt like I kind of had to do it to get to the group of people that were going to run a similar pace to what I wanted. And like 303 wasn't like, it was fine, but I guess like
Yeah.
you don't want to be running like, geez, just slower than 10K pace at the first 2K of a
Yeah.
marathon. And I faded a tiny bit in the last like 8K. Like it was quite an okay run, I thought. One of my better marathons, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think I like the races in Japan. They always that well,
But
both the
very
ones I
hard.
did. Yeah, they seem to suit me.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, maybe the time zone, the climate that I got over there. But I think there was like a maybe a 2:18, 19 if things kind of went really well that day. I
Yeah.
certainly had a better experience in Fukuoka than probably what I did when I went to Berlin the
Yeah.
next year. Mm.
Yeah. So you went to Berlin. You didn't improve on the time? You
Nah,
ran
so I did Rotterdam first,
right, yeah,
and
I can
I
remember that.
yeah, so I tried to qualify for Rio.
Yeah.
Um, And the one thing that I like look back on with that one is like back in that era, like they'd slowed down the times for qualifying for the marathons.
Mm.
I think it went out to about 2:19 or something like that. And there was you knew who was like fastest, second fastest, third fastest. So you kind of knew what time you had to do to jump into that top three. And I think it
Yeah.
was from memory about 2:15:40.
Yeah.
Um, which I kind of thought that I can run 2:16. Um, they should be okay. But the one thing I take from the Rotterdam Marathon was just the process versus outcome mindset. Like I went to
Yeah.
Rotterdam and completely threw the process out the window. Like
Yeah.
started off, the outcome was the only thing I was thinking about. Through 1K, am I on pace for that 2K,
Yeah.
3K? And I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'm on pace. And then it just quickly, you're not thinking about the right stuff.
Yeah.
And I was reminded when I did some sports psych stuff a bit down the line, like what were you thinking about when you ran your personal best? And it's often those moments of you're feeling relaxed, or there are certain cues related to the process that allow you to
Mm.
run really well. And then I just, as soon as they said that, I was like, oh, Rotterdam was so outcome driven that
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
was never going to end well. So went to
Yeah.
Rotterdam early year, and then I did Berlin in the second half of 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it doesn't matter what time or what split you're going for. If you're above threshold within the first K or the first 2K, you're not going
Yeah.
to hang on. So
Yeah,
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 I
yeah,
guess it's
and
fair.
just like that, like for the marathon, you've got to be relaxed, and like
Yeah.
thinking thoughts like that just cause you to just tense up, like
Yeah.
without even realizing it. And yeah, that was definitely a learning that I got there. So yeah, I went to Berlin later that year, and maybe I ran a PB by a second.
Yeah.
Um, but like I didn't actually count it because of how long it took me to get to the start line in Fukuoka. In my head, I'd already ran faster anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is yeah, Fukuoka, you say is a better result. Um, I think when I was looking through the photos from some of these races as well, again, shoe talk, it's probably overdone a lot, but just looking at these minimalist racing shoes is just like you've got to think to yourself now that
Yeah,
maybe I could probably add another or take a minute or maybe 2 to 3 minutes off your actual
yeah, yeah.
your times.
There are a few factors with that. I certainly look at guys that I used to compete against and beat like convincingly that are now
Yeah.
faster than me. So I'm always like, yeah, I could. Like I say to people, yeah, I could have ran 2:14. Like that's a
Yeah.
2:17 equivalent in the super shoe. But then at the same time, then you think like I was someone that could handle like massive training loads without super shoes, and like
Yeah.
is that like would I have responded as well as like these other people? I'm not sure. Like I never really got to put down the mileage in super shoes to really kind of test that theory out. But they've certainly kind of allowed a lot of runners to be able to either train harder, race harder, and maybe not necessarily need that same hardness in the legs that we used to have back
Mm.
then for the marathon.
Yeah. That's interesting because I was thinking, given that you did such high mileage, you'd be able to, it would benefit you heaps because you'd be able to do even more. But it's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of being able to tolerate that amount of mileage without the shoes. You're kind of filtering out
Mm.
everyone else who can't. And now
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
allowed those
yeah,
people, it's brought
yeah,
them up so that they can actually compete with you. And I guess
yeah.
it's kind of changed the nature of the marathon it's more like a half marathon in terms of the toll it takes on your body compared to
Yeah.
what it used to be, which was just absolutely devastated you. But yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Like I said earlier, like I'd be 15th in a 5K nationals, but third
yeah,
in the marathon. Whereas, you put a pair of super shoes on everyone, and those guys are now kind of on par, maybe. But yeah, I
yeah,
don't have enough data. I couldn't do the volume in super shoes in terms of like marathon and stuff later to really know how I kind of responded.
yeah. I
And the
think
Brooks super shoes were crap when I was still
yeah,
running too.
the early ones they seem like they've caught up now,
Yeah,
but
they do. They
yeah,
do.
yeah. But yeah, from my perspective anyway, I think I don't know if I'm a super responder to the shoes, but since wearing them, I haven't had any major injuries and I've been able to do
Yeah,
way more mileage. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
great.
it definitely makes a difference, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess you got through that period and then breakthrough, I guess Lake Biwa
Yeah,
training going into that was really, really big. I had a look back through and yeah, you were hitting upwards of 230 Ks a week heading
yeah,
into that marathon. So
yeah.
I guess talk me through that.
Yeah. So I remember coming out of the end of 2016 and I'm like trying to think of like what I can change. Why am I getting to 30K and not being able to put it together?
Yep.
Um, and I think like one thing that I was still doing that I think was a bit of a factor was like too much taper. And
Yep.
I think like, I'd always listen to you start to like really back it off 3 weeks out and then 2 and 1. But then when I like actually thought of it from the outside, I'm like, well, I've always been someone that I feel responds to stimulus really quickly, but also detrains really quickly as well.
Yep.
Um, and I started to think, gee, maybe I need to like adapt my taper a bit, which kind of like suits the fact that I was doing so many miles as well. Like yeah,
Yep.
I felt like I'd get to those marathons, and I wasn't as fit as I was a couple of weeks earlier. So that was one thing that I locked in to change in the BWAR block.
Yep.
Um, I got 10 weeks ish out. Like BUR was the start of March, and in January, I actually wasn't very fit. I I was going pretty well over like the track stuff. I think I ran a 10K PB in the December, but then I went overseas for a beer mile and
Yep.
didn't get as much running in. And I opened up my marathon sessions and I was like, oh, I've got a long way to go.
Mm.
I went to Cadbury Marathon down in Hobart at the
Yep.
start of that year, and I did another one of those training things to kind of boost things along a little bit. I was happy with how it went, but
Mm.
I guess like within myself, I know that the effort that day was probably a little bit harder than maybe what some of the others had been previously. And I was kind of in a race that day as well against some guys that were running just under 230.
Yep.
But things really changed when I went up to Falls Creek after that. I was up there for a month or so. It was by that stage, a lot of people had already came off the mountain. So I was up there a lot of it on my own. Just kind of putting the work in. I'm pretty sure I had a 4 week block of, yeah, as you say, probably average 230 Ks a week. Had a
Yep.
really solid weekly structure in place at that stage, and I was never impressive at altitude, but I always felt like I responded well to the altitude.
Yep.
So I came back down, and I remember a session I did when I came back down, and I was like, oh wow, I'm absolutely like going really well here. And yeah, things kind of continued into that race, along with like I changed the taper up a bit. Like I think my second last week was still like somewhere in the like just under 200K, like 180, 190K in the second
Yeah.
last week. And then I kind of like shut it down a bit in that like 5, 6 days before the race. And yeah, things went great out there. And yeah, a great memory it was.
Yeah. I can remember watching it on, it might have been a replay, like a few hours later, but seeing you come around the track and you were kind of, I don't know, you couldn't control yourself a little bit. You were breaking out in
Yeah.
tears because it had finally happened. You've been working for so many years and you pulled it off. So yeah,
Yeah.
just I guess that last lap, how did that feel?
Yeah, it was awesome. And because it was another example of like heading into a championship, kind of knowing the situation of like
Yeah,
where people were running and that kind of thing. I knew that the performance that I'd put down that day was, likely going to be enough to go to world champs.
yeah,
So, and that started to kind of hit me in that last 400 meters. That like all the hard work that I'd put in was like about to pay off. And
yeah,
I remember it being a pretty rough like week leading in. I had some like personal stuff happening as well. So
yeah.
my mind wasn't really like in the game so much, which, in hindsight mightn't have been a bad thing.
Mm,
But I had a really good pack of guys. Like I think there was an Irishman, Jack Colreevy was there as well. Um, that I could kind of sit in with. The conditions were brilliant, and just it was finally a marathon where I got to like 25K, and I actually thought, nah, this is on today. This is happening. I knew like um, it's funny when you're getting into the marathon and you're thinking, okay, like just hang on, like, and it always starts to hurt a bit from that 30K mark. But
yeah,
on that day, something in my head at 25 just said, nah, you've got this today. Like, I tell people now that like I knew I didn't need any carbs or anything in that
yeah,
last like hour. I had it covered. Like I just felt, I just knew that things were gonna kind of keep going strong. That's how good I felt
yeah.
in that last part. That's another thing that's changed as well over the last
Fueling, yeah,
so
yeah,
many years as well is the
yeah,
nutrition and stuff.
yeah,
But no, I look back on that last lap and like that emotion and like I just knew what it meant, and it was definitely now looking back like as a non-runner, definitely one of the best moments that I had for sure.